spring.
Library Week.
Library Week, yeah. And we're kind of all been thinking of this stuff. And they kind of hatched this idea that maybe this would be a good thing to show at the museum. Pitched it on, and Molly said, great. So that's what happened last week, was a demonstration in changes, and some of you may have seen that. But we thought, well, we need to kind of do something that's a little more in-depth and involved for people who are really, really interested in the technology. So this is the second workshop of the day. The one this morning went really good. And we made all the mistakes we're going to make, and so you guys get to hear the ones without any mistakes. But Joe Deken, he's from St. Louis area. He got his undergraduate degree at Washington University in physics. Went on for a PhD in mathematical statistics at Stanford University. What you do with a PhD is usually you do a lot of teaching, and so he has subsequently taught all over. He's taught at the University of Texas in Austin, University of Southern California, and then also was the Associate Dean of Information Resources here at SIU School of Medicine, so that's kind of one of his connections to Springfield. And in all those places, he kind of received rewards and accolades for innovative teaching of things like robotics and computer networking, artificial intelligence, that sort of thing. Did a stint at the National Science Foundation in the Computer Information Science Directorate. But one of his, and from talking to him and from listening to him, you'll see that one of the big things that he's interested in is breaking down the barrier between technology and the public and making it more accessible for everyone. And so that's what he has done. He's published a number of popular books looking at the impact of computers and technology on society and where this is going, kind of in a more a futurist approach. Recently has been the technology curator at the California Museum of Science and Industry in LA, the senior scientist at the Rubin Fleet Science Center in San Diego, and really has an interest in the public understanding of science and active participation in contemporary science. In 2008, he and a number of other people created a new group, a new nonprofit called New Blankets. And New Blankets is, the idea behind it is to develop new technologies, new participation mechanisms which will reinvent the community public library concept of Andrew Carnegie. So this idea of free libraries, the idea of a library in and of itself is kind of evolving very quickly. And so this idea is to create these free knowledge spaces and free technology spaces that they're kind of working on. There is, Mona created a small website that kind of is will send you in many different directions for looking at this 3D technology and exploring it. And that is think3d.museum.state.il.us. And Joe's...
It's on these cards too.
It's on these cards in the corner over here. And then Joe's nonprofit New Blankets also has a website, newblankets.org. There's a sign-up sheet in the back that if you haven't signed up yet, please do. So we're kind of trying to track who's showing up. And what we'll do today is Joe's going to have some remarks and some background on 3D printing and where this is going. And not just on the technology itself, but on how this technology will be used and potentially integrated into society and changing how we think. And I'll talk a little bit about how we've been using 3D technology both in the imaging as well as the printing in our own work here at the State Museum after that. And then we'll have a good chunk of time where you can kind of wander around and watch this stuff in action and ask questions and that sort of thing. So without further ado, take it away, Joe.
Thanks. This isn't really a talk so much as a confab, conversation and so on. And the room is meant to be set up. I learned a little in my museum years, but there's supposed to be stuff here so you can walk around and see things and meet some other people and talk. And of course, this is all where they're doing all the scanning here, so they can tell you about that. There are 3 printers up here that are made by 3 different companies. I'll tell you in a minute. They all come from the same sort of biological descent. They're all in the same family tree. You can see some of the materials that we print with here. This table is full of things that we have printed, you know, table, the light box, and so on. And they represent a lot of different things, both in the kinds of ways that they were produced, because they were produced in a lot of different ways. In other words, where did these models come from? And also what the topic is. You know, the reason that you make bust of Beethoven is not the same as you make a 12 times scale model of the inner ear, but both things are interesting, and I like them both very much. By the way, the ear there is on a piece of black construction paper because you'd probably miss it. The actual size inner ear is not very big, but sitting next to it is that exact same structure blown up 12 times, and it's a whole lot easier to understand what's going on than one that's blown up 12 times. So making 3D doesn't always even mean making it the same size or things like that. Could have cutaways, could have one things. Over there is sort of the new blankets corner, and there's lots of things about new blankets there. The key thing, if you only want to look at one thing, is that triangle there, the blue triangle that's sort of on the left. That's kind of the model, and the model is free public libraries happened in communities, first of all because the community wanted them. Carnegie just didn't go around willy-nilly giving anybody a library who said, yeah, we'll take your money. There were a lot of things. So the community had to make a commitment. We still have that. That's the base of the triangle. You have to have some sort of a circulation mechanism, and we're looking for circulation mechanisms that don't require shelves, don't require any of that stuff. Things like this use auction, which I'll tell you a little bit about. It's basically community cooperative mechanisms that make sure that things are still flowing through the community and that they're renovated and kept up and so on, without a big bureaucracy, without a big infrastructure. And the third thing is inventing actually new kinds of devices for this era, which ordinarily wouldn't exist, maybe because they're not commercially feasible or something. So you'll see a lot about the suitcase supercomputer, and actually put a mini suitcase supercomputer on the table there. But the suitcase supercomputer is typically made out of 25 Sony PSPs arranged in an array, and most people didn't know, kids didn't know that PSP even had a camera. But we have events, and 25 kids would all be taking 25 videos of the event at the same time. And those are put together in what we call communimentaries. They're like documentaries, but they show simultaneously the views of all the participants, and they're edited together and things like that. And certainly for, you know, getting kids to be docents in the museum and so on, you want them to be able to just go through and begin to make guided tours to your museum and things like that. So we give those kinds of things away, and the idea of the suitcase supercomputer is that it comes back together and there's a synergy. You have all those 25 displays able to be showing things at the same time, and they're orchestrated, and they can make a video wall or things like that. That section there, if you wander there, is sort of the guts of the 3D printing business. And I'm going to say more about it, so I won't say too much about it in detail right now, but long and short of it is this 3D printer is a robot. This is my book on robots, which I'm not selling because you can't, it's hard to find it, but this would give the idea, and you can find it on ABE books or something, but not only the Roomba and some other things you've heard of, but these 3D printers are in fact robots, and I'm going to go in detail a little bit about why they're robots and how a robot person would think about them. But that's relevant for a number of other things. And I want to include a certain disclaimer here, which occurred to me sometime when I was getting this talk ready. And I thought, you know, a lot of people, they have a phone, and their phone has a digital camera on it. And they don't know how the phone works. They don't know how the digital camera works. But what they like is when they call somebody, that person answers and they talk to them. And when they push the button, they get a picture, you know. So I thought, well, Joe, maybe you're telling people a little more about 3D printers than they want to know. They want to just be able to kind of point their phone at something and walk over here and pick up a plastic copy of it, you know. Well, it's not there yet for a number of reasons, but besides all that, I think it's a good thing to know a little bit about it. Like if you actually knew anything about your phone, you would know that your phone is a computer with a radio in it. And you're getting ripped off by somebody who won't let you send a radio signal to your friend, you know, because they got a license. So we're not going to go into that. But anyway, you know, sometimes knowledge can help you. Sometimes it just make you wonder, just make you shake your head. Things that make you go, okay, well, the phone company makes me go, Anyway.
You're not going to single one out, are you?
Well,
Do you want a big man villain?
Well, Verizon told somebody that my account had been expired, and his reaction was, "Whose list did you get on?" So anyway, my license isn't expired, but, and I told somebody that when I die and go to heaven, I will be given back all the syllables that Verizon has stolen from me in all my phone calls, because about one every fourth syllable gets dropped in my call. So this is what I'm going to try to do, and I thought I'd tell you in case I don't do it all. I wanted to find out something about the people here, and I guess my one question was, is there anybody here that has a 3D printer? Anybody thinking of getting one? Yeah, a few, okay. You probably have other robots that you don't know about it. Your garage door opener is a robot, pretty primitive robot. You might have a Roomba, turn around and see. And I had questions there. And only one person answered, but thank you to the person who answered. Anyway, there are questions there. It was like, if you want to write on the board. The first question was, if you had a 3D printer, what would you make? So somebody said jewelry. Pardon? And yeah, in fact, how do you think 3D printing will improve soon? Well, I gave you a hint. In other words, if there were a camera on your phone that you could point at stuff and then walk down to Office Depot and pick it up as a plastic model, that would be an improvement. But I do know there are going to be desks at those places, Office Depot and Staples, in the next year or so. You can take in a USB stick or something and get your model back. So I'll trust you, or when we're walking around, you can tell me what you're interested in. I mean, there was a good representation contingent this morning who were interested in the arts, and the arts are very interested in any kind of technology. Some ways arts lead to other technology. Number one is going to relate to some of these other things, but this is, I believe, 3D printing and the bigger picture, which is what you would call the democratization of manufacturing, is a big deal. It's likely to be a watershed thing. And the thing that you could compare it to, if you're trying to think about Gutenberg's press, and think of the democratization of reading and writing and printed materials that happened when people didn't have to go to a scribe or someone, or the PC, which came along in the early 70s, and it obviously has changed a lot. So this is actually the Silico Sapiens business. These robots are sort of a life form, and you might think that they're an invasive species, but we'll go and talk about what the model is for that. Theory, I just want to put this in because I won't have a lot of time to talk about it. There's a book I like very much, and I'll put the cover up later on. It's called Socrates' Ancestor, and it's about the classical Greek culture that existed, very strong, very flourishing culture before writing was invented. And it's by a wonderful Canadian author named Indra McEwen. It's an MIT Press book. And the short synopsis of the book is the Greeks had a wonderful cooperative egalitarian culture until writing came along and ruined it. So they talk about a lot of the making and so on, think that Greek culture was built on isonomia, the fact that every hearth had a loom, which was an upright loom so that everybody could see what was being woven and so on, and the culture of building ships, which are in fact built almost the same way that things were woven on the loom. Anyway, we'll get to that. So, and people say, probably, how do these things work? So I am going to give you a little bit of nuts and bolts about how to actually print something on a 3D printer, and we've got a stack of things that didn't work there as well as things that did work, so we're not trying to shine you on. Some of this is not as easy as you'd like it to be. How do you do 3D printing yourself? And I think it's wide open here, and I'll tell you this, if you're old enough to remember when the personal computer appeared in the 70s with the Altairs, we've come a long way from that. And those were machines that would take you a long time to build, and then when you programmed them, you basically toggled in a binary code and then hit a switch next for the program counter, and then well, we're a long way from that too. So this technology is going to evolve a lot, and even from the examples I'm going to be talking about, the Kinect. The Kinect was a Microsoft product that went with the Xbox, but now it has an open, free software interface. So things like the Kinect are aware of 3 space and they're aware of what's going on in 3 space. So then it becomes possible not only to scan objects, but actually to sculpt objects just by moving as if you were modeling clay and so on. And there's some examples in the